The display unit setting changes the system of measurement, but it doesn't actually change the size of objects. It doesn't scale the world. But there is a way to change the scale of the world and the accuracy of spatial calculations by changing the system units. I've got this 1 cubic meter box here in the world. I'll select it and go over to the Modify panel to show that it's 1 meter on a side. Now let's go into the Customize menu to Units Setup. The big button at the top is labeled System Unit Setup. Click on that and it launches a child window. Here we can set the internal accuracy of 3ds Max. We can interpret a system unit as any size, and that will effectively scale the world up or down. You may need to do this if you're modeling a very small or a very large world. If you wanted to model a very large object such as a planet to unity scale or 1-to-1 scale, then you might want to change the system unit scale value, or else build a miniature version of the planet. 3ds Max makes it easy for you to change the system unit scale. Some other programs don't even have this ability. When you change this, you alter the absolute size of objects in the world. If I set the system unit scale to meters, now instead of my object being 1 cubic meter, it's now almost 40 meters on a side. Nothing changed in the viewport, but the entire world is now being interpreted at a different scale. Usually you want the system unit scale set to inches, which is the default, because that's a good compromise for scenes that are built relative to the scale of the human body. You can model objects that are very small, like fractions of a millimeter, and you can also model objects that are very large, on the scale of kilometers. Below this is an origin slider. This allows us to check the accuracy of calculations at various distances. A 3D scene is not really infinite, and it's not infinitely accurate. As we get farther away from the origin or the center point, the calculation accuracy goes down. As we drag this slider, we're testing that accuracy at different distances away from the origin. This black mark is the distance at 1 system unit away, so I'm testing the accuracy at about 1 system unit. And the farthest extents of the world are over here on the far right. The number down here, resulting accuracy, indicates the smallest area of space that can be resolved at that distance. Higher numbers are less accurate. At a given distance, 3ds Max can't determine the difference between 2 points if they're closer together than this threshold. We want that value to be as low as possible. If we bring the slider back now near the origin, then the accuracy is nearly perfect, but very far away, we get much worse accuracy. So that should give you a clue to best practices. Simply placing objects far away from the origin is a bad idea because you're asking for problems. And you might see round-off errors that can cause points to collapse and corrupt your models, or objects may not render, and so on. The system unit setup is really only applicable in 2 situations. The first is when you need to model a very large or very small scene at unity scale, and you can't cheat by modeling a miniature or so-called bigature. A more common application of the system unit scale is for compatibility with other applications. For example, maybe you need to export to a game engine that needs system units in something other than inches. I do recommend that you leave this at inches unless you have some compelling reason to change it. So with it set to inches, I'll click OK, and then click OK to exit out of the Unit Setup dialog. We didn't actually change anything. One last point, if you're going to change the system unit scale, it's best practice to change it before you begin modeling. If you change the system unit scale in the middle of a project, you may experience those round-off errors that I mentioned. That's how to use the system unit scale to set the accuracy of internal spatial calculations and to maximize compatibility with other applications.